Hi, my name is Anthony Emberley, and I'm excited to talk to you today about how you can optimize for learning early in your PM career. Um, Granted, you should be learning throughout your career, but want to talk a little bit more about especially how it can be helpful early in your career. You can find me on Twitter at Anthony Emberley. I took a 6-year Twitter hiatus, but I'm back and my DMs are open if you have any questions following this talk. Cool. So just to give you a quick overview of what I'm going to talk about today, first I'm going to give a quick intro on who I am and my product journey. Then I'm going to talk about why you would want to optimize for learning, especially early in your career. And then I'm going to go through kind of a 3-step framework to think about learning more proactively, which includes determining what you want to learn, taking action on and learning what you want to learn, and evaluating your learning and repeating. And then at the end, I'll summarize this whole framework and give examples along the way. So I'm really excited to chat with you guys about this today, and I hope you enjoy. So quick intro on myself and my journey in product. I studied computer science at MIT from 2013 to 2017, and the summers are usually spent doing software development internships. So the one I specifically want to highlight was at Adapar, where I joined as a software engineering intern. But this was right around the time I started learning about product, and I got super interested in it. And the more I learned about product, the more I wanted to get my feet wet with it. So what I did was I talked to the PM on my team, and he wound up being very busy at the time. And I asked if I could take some of his projects on for myself. I was lucky that was able to happen for both of us. And once I started doing those projects, I just absolutely loved product management and wanted to do it for my career. So one quick takeaway is anybody who's looking to get into product management and currently works with a product manager, I would strongly suggest you learning from them and asking them if there's any sort of small projects maybe on their back burner that you could help them out with, which is just a really good way to get your foot in the door for product management. Anyway, back to my journey. After that, I graduated in 2017 and joined the Uber APM program, which is a rotational program where you spend 6 months on 3 different teams. The first team that I was on was shared rides, and I absolutely loved shared rides. I got to help launch Express Pool, which is the walking version of Pool. That was a lot of fun. And then on my second rotation, I wanted to do something that was a little bit out of the ordinary. So I worked with the autonomous group and helped build products for autonomy engineers to make their workflows faster. So if you can imagine kind of a 3D IDE where you could debug where the car is wanting to go, what objects it's perceiving, and all the algorithms that the autonomy developers work on. That was great, but I, in the end, wanted to do something more consumer focused. And so I spent the last 6 months of the program and then a little more than a year after that working on the Uber rider promotions team, which I'll talk a little bit more after that later in the slide deck. And after about a year and a half on that team, I learned a ton from Uber and a ton from that team, but I kind of felt my learning slowing, which I'll definitely talk about more. And as that happened, I left Uber and have recently started a company in the media technology space, and have really enjoyed that and think that a lot of the learning that I did at Uber and even before Uber really helped me with that. So I'm excited to talk with you guys a little bit more about that. So moving on, why is it so important to optimize for learning, especially early in your career? Well, I see learning as your personal flywheel. So it helps propel your career. However, people are often not thinking about and prioritizing their learning. They're prioritizing their career instead. And I think that these should go hand in hand. If you aren't learning at a super fast pace, this means that you aren't fully maximizing your potential. So I highly encourage people to, especially earlier in their careers, learn as much as you can on a broad variety of product management topics so that you know what you want to focus on later in your career. And as alluded to before, and I'll talk about more throughout this topic, once you feel your rate of learning start to slow or even stop, You want to evaluate if it's time to make a change so that you can continue to learn rapidly. So the framework that I'm going to talk about today paints learning as a continuous process. I mentioned this before, but learning is something that we rarely prioritize. We prioritize our career and moving up the ladder. But we never think about learning and treat it as a first-class citizen. So today I'm going to go through 3 high-level ways that you can start to prioritize your learning that really helped me in my career, and hope that it'll be helpful for some of you. So we'll talk about setting goals, how to set them, breaking them down, prioritizing your learning. We'll talk about how you actually take action and do the art of learning, and finally, evaluating your learning. So making sure that you are still on the path that you set out to take, and how you can then also repeat the process over and over. So first part, determining what you want to learn. So like I mentioned before, you want to treat learning just like you treat a product vision. So you start with your long-term goal. And a lot of people luckily have this already for their career. They're thinking about where you want to be in 3 to 5 years. If you haven't thought about that, that's okay. Maybe now's a good time to get into that. But here are a couple examples of some of these long-term goals. So maybe you want to start a company. This was me about 3.5 or so years ago, and that was the kind of long-term goal that I set. Maybe you want to become a senior PM or be promoted a couple times. Maybe you want to get into PM management or become an industry expert. All these are just kind of a small set of examples, but think about where you want to be in the next 3 to 5 years, and then you can start to work backwards from that. Which brings me to the second step. So you want to break down this long-term goal or vision for your own career and your learning goals, and break it down into milestones. So for example, if you want to learn how to start a company, one of those milestones might be as simple as learning how to launch a product. If you want to become a senior PM, maybe first you need to learn how to be a PM2, and there's competencies usually related to that. If you want to get into PM management, maybe you should learn how to mentor first. And again, these are just kind of these milestone examples. So within each of these milestones, you then have a set of learnings, which I'll give an example on the next slide. A set of learnings that you would feel the need to check off before you complete that milestone. And finally, after you have that set of learnings within each milestone, you got to prioritize it, just like a traditional product roadmap and product vision. So the way that this helps me is coming up with some sort of input examples, and then taking those inputs and just ranking each of those priorities. So what that could be importance to the goal, or PM competencies, or time urgency. That's one where recently I very quickly needed to learn how to hire someone. I'd never done that before, and it became very urgent that I learned it in a short period of time. So when you're breaking these down into milestones, usually the milestones are probably more on a 6-month time frame, but sometimes they can be shorter. You want to make sure that the milestones are at least between 3 to 6 months. And so now I'm going to just give you a little personal example. I mentioned this before, but right around the time I joined Uber and was graduating from college, I decided that my long-term goal, my 3 to 5 year goal, was to start a company as a product leader. And the way that I thought about this constantly was, okay, I need to learn how to become a full stack PM and be able to take care of all of the product things related to being a founder. And so some of the milestones that I set for my learning was, 1, launch a consumer-centric product. I knew I needed to know what our users want and be able to launch a product that they actually enjoyed. I also knew that as a founder, you need to be able to launch and test products quickly. Now I put marketplace in here because I was at Uber and at first was thinking that I wanted to start a marketplace type company. But I also just wanted to learn more about that space. So that's kind of how that milestone came to be. And then finally, I wanted to become a successful PM lead for a larger team, in hopes that as a founder, your team grows. And I wanted to be able to understand how to influence those around me and the stakeholders for a larger team. So those are some of the milestones. And then I had a prioritization framework. I'm actually going to focus in on that second milestone. So that prioritization framework usually looked like, what's the most important thing for starting a company? What are dependencies on my future milestones? And then again, thinking about being a full stack PM, sometimes you can either minimize your weaknesses or build off your strengths. I prioritize minimizing my weaknesses a bit, again, just so I could have a whole tool belt of product competencies. And so you'll see on the right that this was an example of some of the learnings that I felt I needed to learn in order to launch and test marketplace products quickly. So, roadmap planning and strategic thinking. I needed to become a marketplace expert to be able to do this. Wanted to have operational excellence, again, so you can get on some kind of build train of launching and learning and launching and learning. And then what was less important, but still important for me to think is fostering a community and culture of product thinking. I'm still very much a big fan of getting folks on your team aligned on and thinking like a product manager does. It really helps others come up with great product ideas, and even be able to cut out some of the time that it takes for engineers and product managers to work together. If you build up a culture that has everybody thinking about product, engineers can start to make those decisions, and you can move even faster. The last thing I'll note on this slide is that as you're keeping a list of these learnings that you want to get out of each milestone, keep track of a list of things that you can't learn in your current role. So again, my example, I wanted to start a company as a product founder. Obviously, there are lots of things that I couldn't learn at Uber as an Uber PM that would help me feel 100% confident in being a founder. So just, be able to definitely keep track of those things that you want to learn, and you can maybe start learning them on the side if it's not exactly relevant to your role. But make sure you have a clear delineation between what you can learn in your current role and what you can't. So next section, I want to talk about taking action. So you know what you want to learn. Now, how do you make sure that you learn it? Well, the first step that I'm going to talk about, which may not apply to everybody, but is choosing an opportunity. So if you're in the position of being able to choose what your opportunity is and your learning list, I encourage creating some sort of matrix where you can rank all of the opportunities based on the alignment with your learning goals. And then you may also have some factors along with that. I always like to prioritize for manager, team, personal growth, problem space, et cetera. As part of the rotational program, there was more choosing, but this can also apply to, I think, anyone. If you're choosing to leave a company and see what your other options are, I think that it's important that you consider all of these things. If you want to make a move within the company, a lot of large companies like Uber make it very easy to do that. This is something that can help you there too. And just like typical product management, I also encourage everybody to set key results and deadlines for your learnings. So usually this can be, and you want to make sure that it's measurable, so you're able to say, hey, yes, I feel like I learned this to a proficient amount, or no, I need to learn this more once it comes time to evaluate, which is the next step. I also encourage you to set deadlines. Sometimes this can be related to, and oftentimes it's related to performance reviews, but I liked to kind of delineate the two, especially if I wanted to learn something more within a shorter time frame than the 6 months that we typically did performance reviews at Uber. And finally, go out there and learn it. So once you have these KRs and deadlines that you're trying to reach for your personal learning goals, go out and do it. I'd encourage the two main ways that I found that are great for learning is one, learning from people. So seeking out mentors both within your company and within your network, and reaching out to people and that are experts in a certain area that you want to learn is a very valuable way to continue that learning. And then also learning by doing. So one specific example for me is when I didn't know how to do marketing or a go-to-market plan, I worked with my product marketing manager and asked if I could take on one of her small back burner projects and kind of take the lead on it. And of course, she helped walk me through it. But that gave me a really good understanding of how to create a go-to-market plan, which was something that was very helpful. So usually they go hand in hand. You learn by doing and from people, but that is how I recommend going out and doing it. So again, I'm going to talk about a quick personal example. So like I mentioned, I was part of the rotational program. So often there were lots of teams at Uber that were looking for an APM to join their team. We usually got to talk to and interview with 30 plus teams each 6 months. And so, what I did was created kind of a matrix, like I mentioned, with some of the teams that I was interested in, and highlighted roadmap planning, operational excellence, marketplace expert, great mentors, and the list goes on and on. I probably had 10 or 12 factors in the end. And I ranked all of these. And the one that I felt would help me learn the most to become a founder was bikes and scooters. That being said, it didn't go as planned, and I wound up on the rider promotions team, which was awesome. But what I did was kind of reevaluated my learning. So what can I get out of this team, which was within marketplace instead of being outside of marketplace? I was able to kind of reprioritize some of my learnings based off of that. So after I kind of had some of those learnings that we talked about before, I set KRs and deadlines. So these were all 6 months, again, because it was a rotational program. But for roadmap planning, I wanted to lead the planning for our entire PM area. This didn't necessarily mean decide everything, but at least organize and facilitate the conversations that led to planning. For operational excellence, I wanted to launch 3 A/B tests per month at a pretty quick rate within my team. And then I wanted to become a marketplace expert. So my KR there was to present to the VP of product 2 times. And I felt like that would really ensure that I'm an expert in an area and kind of be a forcing function for that. And so how did I actually go out and do that? For roadmap planning, again, I just volunteered to lead. It turns out that some folks don't like leading the planning part and the organizational. And so I just kind of stepped up there. I looked at past examples and retros. I talked to peers and mentors and got a pretty good understanding of kind of how to run that, and then ran planning for the area. For operational excellence, Uber had a position called product operations, which usually runs all of the launch schedules in terms of all the operational things that needed to happen. On rider promotions, we launched every single week promotions, whether we were testing something new or not. We retrained the models and launched new promotions every week. So I want to do that for a couple weeks in a row to get really a feel for what that was like. And finally, becoming a marketplace expert. This was one where I really had to lean on my peers and learn from people. So I spent just a ton of time with existing experts. I jammed on different product ideas with with mostly data science because it was, they were some of the marketplace experts on the team. And then I started presenting my learned concepts to other people, and that kind of really helped me solidify that I had kind of learned what it was like to work with marketplace. So finally, we'll go to the third step of optimizing for learning. That's evaluating your learning. So you've set your goals, you've started taking action. How do you make sure that you're actually achieving what you want to achieve? So the first step is to set recurring goal check-ins. So I like to do a bi-weekly meeting that's very informal, just with myself, where I'd go and look at my my career goals and also my learning goals. And of course they go hand in hand, and just ask myself for each one, am I on track? Am I blocked by anything? What's blocking me? Who can help? How can I make sure that I'm, aligning towards that 3 to 6 month deadline that I kind of set for myself? Once you get to that deadline, you can evaluate and rate yourself, and feel free to come up with whatever sort of rating system works for you. But as you kind of have an understanding of, yes, I feel like I grasped this concept and I learned it, or oh, maybe I've learned a little bit, but I want to learn even more. It gives you a good opportunity to also bring that into a conversation with your managers and peers during performance reviews to really check off and see if you actually learned what you had set out to learn. And then finally, you repeat the process. So, once you've come up to a deadline, you can evaluate which learnings have now maybe become strengths and which have been weaknesses. You can reevaluate your backlog of learning is the way that I think about it. And once you reprioritize, you can start taking action again and repeating the process. The one thing I want to highlight here is again, I mentioned this before, as you have these learning tasks, I like to indicate whether it's something that I can learn in this role right now or can't learn. And as soon as the list of can't learn starts to be a lot bigger than the list of can learns, that for me is what signified that I kind of needed a change. And as I mentioned this before, Uber was great for 3 years. I learned an incredible amount, but I really started to feel my learning decelerating towards the end. That's nothing against Uber. There's just a lot of things to start a company that you can't learn from within one. And so that's kind of what finally drove me to realize that the change that I needed was to leave and start a company. That maybe that's join a different team or join a smaller startup, or maybe even you can chat with your manager and see and mention, hey, I have these set of learnings that I'd really like to do, but I feel like I can't get them out of my current role, and hopefully your manager will be able to work with you to figure that out. So just want to take the next couple minutes to review this kind of framework that we've talked about today, and that will be it. So yeah, as I mentioned before, learning is your personal flywheel, and I feel that a lot of times, you know that you're learning, but if you aren't actively thinking about it and optimizing it and setting goals, taking action and repeating, you don't get as much out of what you want. And once you get this kind of flywheel going, I personally felt like it really, really helped me grow in the roles that I was in. And I'm hoping that everybody else can kind of take that with them as well. So again, just to review, the 3 major steps are determining what you want to learn, taking action, and evaluating your learning. So within the first one, set your long-term goals, something that you want to compete in 3 to 5 years. Break that goal down into milestones that are 3 to 6 months, and then within those milestones, you can come up with different specific learnings that you want to get to and check off. And then you just prioritize those based on a set of inputs that make sense for you and your goals. And then finally, next you take action. So if you have the opportunity, you choose the opportunity based on a certain set of factors. Usually I like to do that based off of the learnings that you want to do. Set KRs and deadlines for yourself. Again, this process feels very similar to what you're doing when you're actually taking a product roadmap. But I feel a lot of people aren't thinking this, at least friends that I've chatted with on a daily basis about their learning. Then learn from people and with people by doing, and go out there and ask folks who have too much on their plate to take some of it off if it's a project that will help you with your learning. And then finally, evaluate your learning. So set check-ins so you can regularly make sure you're on pace. At the end of your set amount of time, evaluate with yourself and your manager and your peers, and then take all of the new learnings and put it in your backlog and prioritize and start the whole process over again. So that is how I found it helpful to optimize for learning early in my career. And I'm hoping others will find it helpful as well. That's all that I have. Again, like I mentioned, my DMs are open on Twitter if you want to ask me anything about optimizing for learning or anything about product management in general, or if you just want to chat, feel free to ping me there. But thank you very much for your time, and I hope you have a good one.